He started to tell me in detail how he cheated on me. He started pulling down her skirt. Continue in the story. Story 1. The guy 28M, I 23F have been dating for 7 months, told me he cheated on his ex by sexually harassing. Long and complex story below, but it's an interesting situation, so it might be worth a read. The guy in question was my coworker for a long time, but we only knew of each other and never really talked. 7 months ago we started hanging out, and he suddenly started to join the regular after-works that he had never cared for earlier. To make a 7-month story a bit shorter, we both fell for each other pretty quickly. Only a few months and I was head over heels, picturing myself with him for the rest of my life. When we had dated for about 5 months, he told me he loved me. One thing that I found a bit odd was that he hadn't yet introduced me as his girlfriend. It was as if there was something keeping him from asking, but I didn't know what. Until about 2 weeks ago, when he said that there was something he needed to tell me. He started it off by telling me he knows exactly where he wants this relationship to go and that he feels 100% about us. But then he became very serious and said he has done things in the past that he regrets, and that affects him to this day, and that it too would affect me if I chose to be with him. He also said that this is something he knows he should have told me a long time ago, but he hadn't found a good moment and had been scared of how I would react. This is the story he told me. 3 years ago, he was at a party. Everyone was very drunk and it got very late. Some people were staying at the house overnight, him, his ex-girlfriend, and her best friend included. Apparently, things hadn't been great with him and his ex for a very long time and they had an argument during the party, so she went to bed and he stayed up drinking, talking about it with her best friend. During this chat, he thought there was something between him and her, but obviously knew how bad it would be if something happened between them. They continued drinking and hours later everyone was passed out on mattresses all around the house. He laid down next to her and grabbed her hand, and she grabbed it back. He then touched her breasts on the outside and underneath her hoodie. He then realized how fucked up it was and left the party, waking up the next day with so much anxiety over the fact that he had cheated on his girlfriend. This anxiety later got a lot worse when it turned out the friend was in fact not consensual to his actions like he thought she was. She claimed she was awake but froze and didn't tell him she didn't want him to touch her. The girl reported him for sexual harassment and he was found guilty despite his version, thinking it was all consensual, because he said he had no reason to believe she was lying in her version. He apologized to everyone involved. The girlfriend obviously ended their relationship and her best friend cut all ties with him. He started going to therapy to figure out how he ended up in the situation in which he found himself, and hasn't been drunk since apparently. Needless to say, I found myself in a chalk-like state. I just started crying and felt so confused. Not only was he convicted for sexual harassment and had cheated on his ex, he had also kept that information from me for 7 months. 7 months of time spent together, conversations, and feelings developed. He said he realizes he should have told me earlier, so I could have decided back then if this was something I could be okay with. Now instead, I get all this information when I'm madly in love with him, visualizing our future together. I feel so angry about what he did, and I feel so bad for his ex, and her best friend of course. I also feel so stupid since all of his close friends and family, whom I've met, have known this entire time and I haven't. He also said some of his friends had told him a long time ago that he should tell me, but he still waited for so long. Now I don't know what to do. I have told him that I need some time to think about how I feel about this, which he fully understands. I feel very sad and somewhat deluded by him. I now fear that he will one day cheat on me, something I've never thought before he told me this. I need some help to see this situation from a neutral perspective. Thank you if you read all of this. TLDR, the guy, 28M, I, 23F, am in love with, waited 7 months to tell me he cheated on his ex with her best friend and was later convicted of sexual harassment by the best friend, and I don't know what to do. Don't forget to support my channel by subscribing. Thank you. I met him through high school, me F, 16, and him M, 17. The kid who was the nicest to me. I was a really awkward nerd in high school. People tend to pick on me back in those days, and he was always the one to defend me through all of it. One day there was a girl, let's refer to her as Leroy. She was practically the school's village bicycle, if you know what I mean. She would do anything for drugs, cigarettes, sex, and etc. She ended up being his first. When I wanted to ask him out around the same time, jealously overtook me, so me and my sister, knowing who Leroy is, decided to plot a whole thing in separating them both and having them break up. I had a stupid savior complex where I wanted to save him from an already toxic relationship when he took care of it himself. He was always the good kid in high school where everyone knew him, say their hellos to him as everyone knew his father. He is a nerd just like me where he loved Star Wars, Doctor Who, Star Trek, and anything that is within pop culture. He loves his old movies and music especially. Everyone knew him as the man out of time. So of course here comes me, not only heartbroken but also upset that a girl this horrible was using him. It was out there in broad daylight that she used him for everything. Since I am shy as hell, I could never bring myself to ask him out at the time, but by the time I built up the courage, wrong time, she already asked him out. My sister F, 15, knew him for a while since they both were marching band kids. So she was hip to hip with him. She hears that he plans on splitting up with Leroy, then proceeds to tell me. Me and my sister knew by the time Leroy's sweet 16 rolled around. She was around the same age as my sister. She would tell him as we both concocted this plan on telling Leroy about his plans in an effort to break them both up. Well, it worked. I was at my lowest because I just kept projecting my insecurities, and it's something I've regretted for years. He still remembers this. I confessed to him one day 2 years into our relationship that it wasn't only my sister's fault but it was mine as well. I couldn't hold it back seeing him laugh and smile. I couldn't lie to him. I've always told the truth. He got super angry and said, "You've manipulated me and lied to me, and you have waited all this time to tell me? Did you actually wait this long so when you tell me that I won't be able to break up with you because it's working?" I didn't know how to reply, so of course I said yes. I wish I never hurt him this way. I wish I never hurt him at all. I've always learned to own up to all of my mistakes since I've grown up in a strict household. It was either I tell the truth or I get a beating. I lived in a Latino household that unfortunately was riddled with anger issues. At some point a year passed and I'm in my senior year of high school and he is in his first year of college. I recall on old photos of our musicals in high school and he chimes in through Snapchat and replies on how fondly he remembers it too. That's when we hit it off and started dating. At some point in his job he caught tuberculosis. Insurance wasn't going to cover it. He was sure it was life or death, so he broke up with me so he can save me from the trauma and pain when he does die. It was a miracle when a huge event happened at his job when he received enough money to cover his treatment. We ended up together after graduating high school and his victory in beating this old disease. America has terrible healthcare, Jesus Christ. So here I am now, F, 21, and him M, 22. He recalls this incident after us talking about it multiple times throughout our 4-year relationship and to never let this issue define our relationship or be the reason why we split. He's still hurt about it and he says he remembers this from the day I've confessed. It all happened after a minor argument on popcorn butter. Yeah, really, it was super stupid of me, spilling on my shirt and just repressing my emotions. He always encourages me to stop repressing my emotions as I already have bad enough memory and it would only force me to forget. I tell him, I want to say, something has been off about you. You've been distant. It was the last straw. He turned to me and replies, honestly, I haven't forgotten that day 2 years ago. It has been hurting and sitting inside of me every day. Why did you do it? He added, you've been a huge mess, having your family issues and involving college. I feel like we can't be together anymore. Not for my good, but more for your own good. My family has the tendency on making life harder for me as I have failed 2 times in community college. First time was because of COVID online classes, and the second time my grandfather passed, causing me to slip into a depression. If I sat down for 2 minutes, my mother would insist on calling me lazy, good for nothing. How could my boyfriend imagine being with a woman like me, bad housewife, and so on and so forth. Afterwards, I would get super frustrated and get out of my house and tell my boyfriend all about it. He would hear about it most of the time, but I think this has gotten to him. He realized that my family was crazy. He felt overwhelmed by this. We've been thinking about holding off till next week and talking it out. If it doesn't work out, we split. If it does, we'll have to see what we do from here. I have no idea on what to do. I know that I'll have to calmly talk about the certain points of our relationship that we need to work on. But that's about it really. TLDR, my boyfriend is considering we split up for my good. He still feels conflicted from the time I manipulated him and lied to him 4 years ago, and when I confessed about it 2 years in. Life is hairy, and he also feels that it'd be better if I took care of it myself. I'm scared and I need some advice. Don't forget to support my channel by subscribing. Thank you. Hello all, I hope you are having a good day. I, 25/M, am struggling emotionally. Living alone is not helping, but I am trying to make the best decision for my love life ahead. Firstly, I will share my story and then the issue/decision to go back or not. How we met. A year ago, in June, I met someone, 23/F. At that time, I was out of a rebound relationship. It had been 2 to 3 months since I parted ways with my previous partner, because I wasn't over my first love, which lasted close to 4 years. However, with time, I finally moved on from my first heartbreak and was relatively in a good position. I met her during a solo trip, much away from my current residence. We instantly clicked and parted ways back into our own cities. However, we never stopped talking. Over the course of the next 6 months, we texted every day and our friendship grew into feelings for each other. Neither of us could believe this. We both had experienced our own set of heartbreaks, but this was the first time we were falling so hard for someone, each other. Our relationship. In the beginning, she used to emotionally dump a lot. It was hard to process it, but with time, I grew comfortable with who she was and what kind of trauma she was carrying. She too delved deep into my personality, quirks, and more importantly, my heart. She genuinely gave her all into this relationship, and that goes without saying. As time passed and the distance became unbearable, we decided to visit each other more frequently. Our sex was amazing, the chemistry was off charts, and we connected on a deeper level. I felt happy making her happy. However, after a month or so, that honeymoon period started fading away. At first, I blamed it on the distance. I wasn't sure about my feelings, but knew that this was the right relationship for me. The healthiest one I've had so far. Keeping all that in mind, I kept fighting my anxieties and instinct and kept spending time with her however I can, virtually. After a while, this too started becoming mundane and we thought moving in would be a great idea. Well, it was a terrible idea. The problems. When she moved in, our romance was drowning a little and I spent more and more time away. I would go to college, attend work and play video games. I kept questioning my feelings. Is she the one? Why do I not feel as attracted to her anymore? Do we really have a future? This feeling was killing me deep down. Here I was with a woman who was loving me with all her heart, and I was having my own set of doubts. I came out honest to her, and it was heartbreaking for both of us. She was upfront about something. I want to be with someone who knows he wants to be with me, with that kind of clarity. At this point, we parted ways, calling it the space, or break. I was back to solitude, and suddenly felt relieved. However, this lasted only a while. Her memories started kicking in. All that we could have been. I started feeling extremely guilty about not spending more time with her, not working with a couples counselor, even though I have been taking therapy. Her words keep echoing in my mind, and how much I have hurt her. Reconciliation. After a month, and more, of being away from her, I realized that I do love her. Just didn't put in the effort and took things for granted. I can still get back with her, but my biggest fear is that things will go back to how they were. I don't want to end up in a cycle of doubting my relationship. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. There are many interesting articles ahead.